and lawyer Brian Weke. Starting with the Daily Nation now, and dear sugar, buying sugar is now leaving a bitter taste in the mouths of Kenyans as prices of the sweetener have hit a record high. But in a twin blow, the prices are set to rise even further in the coming days after the government introduced excise duty on sugar imports and temporarily suspended local milling. A few details here accompanying this, what I imagine is a cup of coffee or black tea. They're on the front page of the Daily Nation. There, this sugar prices are retailing between 225 and 250 per kilogram. Retailers are selling a 2-kilo packet of the sweetener at between 460 and 490, and that is up from about 400 shillings it was, I believe, the last time we went big with this story last week. Sugar millers in Western and Nyanza region shut operations over an acute cane shortage. The country will now rely on Sony Sugar, Transmara Sugar, Sukari Industries and Kwale International Sugar Company Limited for sugar. Kenya is a net sugar importer, which means changes in global sugar prices directly impact prices locally. And there's a graph here that accompanies this image. Let me just zoom in a little bit more so we can get a better look. And it shows you the curve, the price curve, up from January 155 shillings per kilogram to about 260 shillings per kilogram in the month of July, which ends today. And that is the current retail price of 1 kilo of sugar. So that is the big story on the Daily Nation. Also sharing the front page is this story on Ruto-Raila clash. On talks agenda, President William Ruto and Azimio chief Raila Odinga's camps have clashed over the terms of reference for talks initiated by the international community, with the opposition disowning a statement released by the government side and insisting that the high cost of living must be on the table. So we'll get into all of that. I do not want to preempt that conversation. Pay us our dues or we won't mark exams, teachers now threaten. NAT warns they will disrupt tests if they're not paid their 2022 arrears. So that is the front page there of the Daily Nation. Criticism in Ndangasi under fire over his critique of Michere Mugo, University Don. Let me just zoom in again so that we get a better look. Here we go. University Don draws the wrath of netizens as well as colleagues in the academia for article critical of fellow literature professor. And I must tell the University Don sitting here before me that it was quite the read. I don't know whether the two of you had occasion to read it. Did you, Daktari? Ndangasi's critique of Michere Mugo.
I read it.
Was it, I don't know, unnecessary, brutal, given the timing of it, Professor Gitile Naituli?
You know, there is people who specialize in critique of literature. But his thrust was that instead of being a deep thinker, and he creates new imagery, new theories in her writings, so she concentrated too much on liberation in literature. Now, Kenyans didn't like that. They have beaten the guy seriously in the social media.
Yeah, I also read this particular article on the criticism he's received over the article.
Henry Ndangasi is one of the apologists that the literature department ever had in the University of Nairobi. So he would not have been in the same league with Michere Mugo and Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. So his criticism, and he's always been a critic of literature. He's never contributed significantly to literature. He's just been a critic. And that's not good enough. I mean, it's good, it's okay to criticize what others have done, but what are you known for, apart from just being a critic? So, Henry Ndangasi, I think he should be aging better than he's doing now. He's not aging well.
Yes, no,
Professor Wanjala was also a critic, but an extremely positive one. You could appreciate his critique, his writings in the critique of literature. But they're right. I think I want to agree with my colleague here that Ndangasi doesn't even reach the level of Wanjala. or even Francis Ibuga. Francis Ibuga was also a writer, but also a critic. But in those two, they are in a class of their own compared to. I think he should have weighed himself before wading into that kind of an analysis.
Oh, I mean, wow. Let me just
I
leave it
haven't
at that.
said that. I haven't said it's not African to criticize somebody who cannot defend themselves
yes.
on account of the fact that they are dead. Why did you wait to do that? You don't do
That one they can reply.
we don't
A
do
lot of
that.
people have asked that question.
Yeah, we don't do that. to
Yeah,
dead people.
because she can't challenge.
She can't reply.
Yeah, she can't challenge what he wrote about her. And then somebody also argued that it was less about her writing and more about her character. Because remember the title was, she was not a deep thinker.
Deep thinker.
All right, let us see what else is contained in the dailies this morning. Hepatitis deaths to eclipse TB, HIV and malaria, warns the World Health Organization. WHO sounds the alarm on current hepatitis infection trends, which show that the disease now kills about 1 million people worldwide each year. So that is the Daily Nation. Let's take a look at the Business Daily. How 72 billion shilling cash inflow puts Kenya on a dirty money watch. Watchdog falls Kenya's fight against illicit cash. Agency flags large cross-border hard cash movements. Let's take a look at the first few paragraphs of this article penned by Dominic Omondi. And a massive movement of hard cash into Kenya, mostly in US dollars, prompted a regional anti-money laundering watchdog to issue a damning verdict on the country's preparedness in the fight against dirty cash. The Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group, which monitors how the region is implementing the global measures against dirty cash, notes that Kenya received suspect 72.2 billion shillings in cash in the 4 years to 2021 that was not sufficiently explained. The agency has, in its report, now asked the Kenyan government to strengthen its strategy in the fight against money laundering and terrorism financing, or risk being grey listed. And on it goes. So more on page 2 of the Business Daily. We are told on the front page here. More trouble for KQ as Ethiopia Fly Dubai allowed more flights. The president spoke about this yesterday at the coast. This one is by Winnie Atieno. Kenya has granted Ethiopian Airlines more flights into Mombasa alongside Fly Dubai in what is said to upset national carrier Kenya Airways, which has been lobbying the government to protect local airlines. The Transport Ministry, which is now implementing the Open Skies policy, says it has allowed Ethiopian Airlines to fly twice directly into Mombasa every week, setting the stage for intensified competition with KQ. The ministry has also allowed the UAE carrier Fly Dubai to fly directly to Mombasa, adding another cash-rich airline on the route. Here's a quote of the Transport Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen. "We have a balance between protecting our local airlines and inviting business and tourists into the country. But even in that situation, we have approved the Fly Dubai, which will begin flying directly from Dubai to Mombasa in 2 months. However, he said Fly Dubai has not been approved to fly to Nairobi. We have also approved Ethiopian Airlines to fly twice directly to Mombasa. We are analyzing the Turkish Airlines and many others. The Open Skies policy requires easing access and rules of use of national airports for foreign airlines. Just to flip on to page 2 here, however, KQ has argued that Kenya risks entering into one-sided deals with foreign carriers in the policy since there is no reciprocity guaranteed. This means that Ethiopia Airlines will be allowed to fight with KQ in the domestic market, but will deny KQ the same fighting chance in its airports in what could hurt its prospects of flying out of its loss-making territory. All right, so there we go. I will let you read the rest. epaper.nation.africa. You will find the Business Daily there. And if I flip over to page 3 before we take a look at the ticker, actually, I'm just going to... Okay, on the ticker to highlight just the first one. Okay, let's just take a look at all 3. Unmasking firms winning state tenders hits Kenya, IMF plans. And the paragraph underneath reads, naming the beneficial owners of companies doing business with the government is off to a slow start, making it one of the remaining pain points for Kenya's commitment to the IMF. ESG reporting fraud Among latest crimes to hit East Africa, more than half of East Africans reported having experienced economic crimes, including sustainability reporting fraud. In the last 2 years, a new report shows the 2022 PwC Global Economic Crime and Fraud Survey for Eastern Africa shows that 6 in 10 respondents have experienced economic crimes. And last on the ticker, big firms' dominance at stock market declines to 4-year low. The wealth concentration among the top 5 NSE-listed companies by market capitalization has fallen to a 4-year low as investors diversify stocks portfolios. CMA data shows the concentration of the 5 most valued stocks fell to 67.8% of the NSE total market capitalization in the quarter to June from 71.97% in March. I've rushed through that because I want to flip through to page 3. Here is an image of a former Kemri CEO, and he has been a person in the news. If you will recall, there was a Nation.Africa poster that was making the rounds. This particular story gets into that detail. And Sam Kiplagat tells us former managing director of Kemri, that is the Kenya Medical Research Institute, Davy Kowach, was sent to prison in September 2021. But he never gave up the fight for his freedom. He filed an appeal at the High Court, arguing that he was punished even after refunding the money he was accused of siphoning from the institute decades ago. His hopes appeared dashed when High Court Judge Esther Maina dismissed his appeal, saying there was no evidence that the EACC had made an undertaking not to pursue him after he refunded the money plus interest. And off he was driven to prison to start his 6-year sentence after failing to pay a fine of 19.3 million shillings. Last year, he sat down and penned a letter to President William Ruto seeking pardon through the Advisory Committee on the Power of Mercy. There is a quote here: "I have been in prison for the last 1 year, serving a 6-year jail term, now at 71. And while incarcerated, my health, sir, has deteriorated. I've suffered a severe stroke and I am hypertensive. Medical doctors have determined that I'm neither fit to stand for the trial, nor am I able to instruct my legal counsel. Similarly, I've suffered depression. I'm now stuttering in my speech and diminished cognition," he wrote. "Sir, without fault, I have served Kenya, Africa, and mankind with courage, honor, and sacrifice as Kenya's longest-serving CEO of a state corporation. I helped Kemri to raise variously over 10 billion shillings in research funds and grants." And so let us see. Let me jump ahead so that I don't have to read the entire piece. The thrust of it is his pleas were heard at State House, and on Tuesday last week, Dr. Koech was among 37 prisoners pardoned by the president following the recommendation of the Advisory Committee on the Power of Mercy. I'll ask Dr. Martin Olo.
Yes, please.
Is this something that happens? This pardon?
Yes,
I know it usually sometimes it's driven, those who have petty, who are incarcerated for petty offenses on public holidays, you'll hear the president say, okay, you know, let them free. What do you make of this particular one?
There is room for the president of Kenya, and indeed I'll say other presidents as well, to do what you call the clemency, or based on mercy and so on. And every year, and even during Uhuru's time, every year, perhaps towards the end of the year, there was a reason for him to pardon a few fellows, call them petty, call them whatever. It's a move to decongest our prisons, but also it's a move to extend mercy, to extend generosity. Now, if you recall...
Okay, sorry, I will allow you time to proceed, yes. But if I could just interject there, does it send the wrong message on the fight
against corruption?
Against graft?
No. You see, it's not that.
In the fight, sorry.
Yeah, the point is, if you recall, Donald Trump, before he left office, he went on a clemency spree. And he pardoned all sorts of people, including some of his friends who had been indicted and so on. It is a tool available to the president to play mercy, but also to play politics. Because when you are leaving, you may want to protect some interests of yours. And it's okay. Now, the issue about Davis Koech is that he says he appealed. and that he refunded the money. So it's not like he totally disappeared with the money. So I would give him the benefit of doubt.
Okay. Hi, Brian.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning. Brian Weke, lawyer. Your thoughts?
Whether the president has power to do so, the answer is yes. He does have power. But surely somebody who has gone through the justice system, somebody who has been presented to court and has been found guilty of an offense, and more so of corruption, really, it is very, very sad that you get the president who says he's committed to fighting corruption, and clearly somebody who has been adjudged and has even appealed, and eventually the court said, no, you have to serve. Because, you know, we have to create sanity in this country. The fight against corruption, really, the president cannot be seen to be pardoning somebody who has been adjudged and found guilty of corruption. Dr. Martin.
Then there will be no business of clemency. It must be
this
somebody who has already been found guilty.
This is not a political process.
No, but
we know very well that the president has powers to give clemency or the power of mercy, but certainly not for somebody who has.
Can I ask something that some people were, I suspect, were thinking, but would not ask out loud? Did this have anything to do with his last name?
I wouldn't go there.
You know the answer.
No, but I wouldn't go there. I think let's give. No. On a serious note, before we go there, on a serious note, David Koech has contributed immensely to this country through his time at Cambridge. He may not be perfect, but he certainly, you can't just lump him in on a tribal tag. He has made a significant contribution to the country, including Cameron and other types of inventions around issues to do with HIV fights and so on. So let us give him the benefit, and let's also allow the president to exercise his clemency or his power of mercy in a manner that, on this one, perhaps justifiable.
What he is saying, though, is the perception it creates. That's what you are saying. And I think politically that's important, because the whole idea is to make corruption expensive to those who practice it. So if you can get convicted and then within 1 year you are forgiven, that doesn't meet that objective. So, and therefore is likely to generate that perception, whether we like it or not.
Okay. Yes, Brian, you have something to add?
Yeah, so basically Dr. Martin is saying that it is right for you to serve and to serve well and steal a little. That is what Dr. Martin is saying.
Yeah.
And to be forgiven by the president.
And then Dr. Martin is saying that because this guy has served well and has done us proud as a country, that has brought in funding, then he's allowed to steal.
A little.
You know, it beats the purpose.
I would have said allegedly, but given he was convicted, I will.
He was convicted.
I will withhold those comments. Karibu Sana Charles, so, you know, former police spokesman. He was contesting the gubernatorial seat, Siaya. He is now, as a running mate, he is now the UDA Siaya County Coordinator. Good to see you this morning. Your thoughts on the subject before I look at what else is contained in the dailies?
Davy.
Yes.
Davy is my man. These are strong men who tried to do their level best when everyone could not touch on HIV, and they tried their level best. I think he's an old man now, and he said he was unwell. And I think there were about 37 other prisoners who are pardoned together with him. I don't know why he's the main issue.
Because of his last name.
Because that is unfair.
I'm sure there must have been others.
Discriminative. But I think at 71 and his previous, I don't think this was much of a corruption case. It was obtaining. He was given money, and we can say you obtained the money. That may not be a purely corruption per se, as Weke tries to put it. But I think it was fair at his age.
But it's obtaining not even worse, if you ask me.
Yes.
Because in delivery, they cheated. obtaining and cheating in the penal code is probably even worse than corruption. It's cheating deliberately.
But even as I asked that question, I remember, I asked whether it has. Also, I'm not saying there should be discrimination just because this is your last name. It should
that is true.
Prevent you from accessing every right that is due you. Okay, shall I look at the Standard now? Standard Star?
Yes, please.
All right, Standard front page, Hustler agenda takes back seat as talks begin. Again, feeds into what we are discussing this morning, does it not? Whereas the sufuria has been the symbol of the recent protests by Kenyans demonstrating against the high cost of living. Word from the two camps indicates that the matter was not given serious attention, resulting in rows between the groups. Kenyans begin to feel the heat of new taxes. From alcohol prices to cost of sending money using mobile platforms, effects of the court decision on new taxes is beginning to be felt by all. And excise duty on fees charged for money transfer services by cellular phone service providers goes up. Fish Act introduces a 10% duty rate on imported fish and a new rate of 5 shillings per kilogram of imported sugar. Already we've looked at where the cost of sugar is at, 260 shillings per kilogram on average. Chamas, the act says income of members, clubs or trade associations will now be taxable. This is expected to hit Chamas hard. Hey, Ebu, wait, chill. The act says income of members, clubs or trade associations will now be taxable. Okay, all right, let me just breathe. Us who are members of Chamas. At the very top here, farmers expect bumper maize harvest. Kenya misses out on Russia grain deal. And from ovarian cancer to World Cup glory. So that is what is on the front page of the Standard, the Star. Here we go. Fresh hurdles hit Ruto Raila talks. Kenya Kwanza statement lists reconstitution of IBC and entrenchment of CDF as subjects of dialogue. Court gives man 8 years for defilement is also on the front page. Big names slug it out as interviews for DPP begin, I believe, tomorrow. Yes, as interviews for DPP start tomorrow, the question in many people's minds is whether the panel will settle on an old hand or one who is fresh in the field. 15 candidates have been shortlisted for the interviews that will run tomorrow and Wednesday. The candidates are some notable names in the legal profession. Let's see the images on the front page. Here we have President William Ruto at the coast. Farouk sits behind him. Musalia Mudavadi next to him. The question of the Prime Cabinet Secretary is among the issues, the 5 issues listed, right? As per the Kenya Kwanza statement. Here we have further down, Martha Karua, Peter Munya, Raila Odinga, and Jeremiah Kioni. This gentleman is not familiar to me. Front page of the Star. The guy.
The one behind here with the yellow.
Yeah, yes. Oh, yes. No, this is, I know him, actually. Yes, I do know him. I think it is a person. He works at the NARC Secretariat, NARC Kenya Secretariat, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, at the very top here, Kia Mtata, Senator Mtata, to challenge Court of Appeals Finance Act 2023 verdict. I think Taifa Leo, was it on Saturday, said Kime Turamba. All right, speaking of, did I look at Taifa Leo, by the way? No, I did not. I was remiss. Here we go. Raila Aruka Mtego, an image here of William Ruto, Raila Odinga. Licha ya kuafikiana kuketi kitako na Rais William Ruto kujadili maswala yanayozoga nchi, Raila ahepa mtego wa Kenya Kwanza kumsawiri kama mtu anayelenga tu kupigania nafasi itakayomfaidi kama mtu binafsi. So the same thing, right? Cost of living lie. Guys, just spare me the rest of it because I may end up with egg on my face. People daily split over Ruto Raila talks as key allies dig in. Elusive dialogue. Efforts by Nigerian ex-President Obasanjo rebuffed by Kenya Kwanza leaders, even as Azimio hardened their stance on issues to be discussed, threaten more protests. So they've done the same thing the Star has done, split the front page, an image at the top of Raila's camp, William Ruto, although it was the other way around on the Star. Queries about Kome silence on detentions. Lawyers and court users sound the alarm over long periods spent by individuals before their bails are processed by judiciary officials. So that is on the front page of the People Daily. At the very top here, Kuria's big delegation sparks new travel rules. Public Service Chief directs that officers should not exceed 45 days of travel in a year and will not have a team of more than 3 members. So 3 questions arise before I move us along to the topic of conversation. 1, what do we make of Ruto's new look? The Kaunda, I'm curious. Yeah, I've been curious for a couple of days. Number 2, we saw Peter Munya. We've seen Peter Munya more increasingly take a front seat, where Azimio's recent statements and even the last protest, there's the protest where him and Martha Karua alipanda boda. So we are seeing him more now. It's like he took a bit of a break. So what do you make of that? And then, of course, I'll ask what do you make of these travel restrictions? Nianze wapi, Tanza hapa. Charles Owino, the question of Peter Munya coming out more visibly in the Azimio camp.
Yeah, Peter falls amongst the new generation of politicians, which are most likely going to take over from the generation of Akina Raila. Munya has a good level of education, a good background. He's a former governor. He's a former minister. He comes from Mount Kenya region. I'm also Meru. And therefore, the Raila team, the opposition team, they must have a representative from that area, given that Meru also has a strong man now. Minister for Interior is not an ordinary minister, and therefore they must have a face of somebody from Mount Kenya who is on their side, who has the credentials that Munya has. So Munya most likely and Kindiki, they'll now play very important roles from the Meru region as Akina Kiraitu leave the space and so on and so forth. So I think it's just appropriate for them, the opposition, to have him on their side.
All right.
Yes.
Brian, was it a mental health break? Because before the elections, again, he was quite vocal. He's not a man to shy away from the political field, the political fisticuffs, let me put it that way, not in the literal sense, but the figurative sense. And now again, we see him take on a more frontline role. Your thoughts?
If you remember, just before the election, when Munya was actually appointed to lead the agriculture docket, which was a major discussion in Mount Kenya. Of course, he was one of the principals within the Azimio coalition. And clearly, he was poised for more or less the same position or much bigger role if Azimio would have won the election. Of course, the loss, surely, it shocked many people. So strategically, Munya had to take a back seat to reflect and re-strategize. And I think now that he has come out with these discussions, and if you do an opinion poll, Kenyans are really suffering. So you're either with the team that is making Kenyans suffer, or you're seen to support the people agenda. And I think now he's come out, and as Charles says, he's the new breed of politicians that will be coming from that particular region. So politically speaking, I think you can see, even in Azimio, the kind of respect that he's been accorded. I saw he's actually the one who read the statement. Yes. Which clearly shows that he's a major player in Azimio from that particular region. All right. So strategically, I think he's okay. He's doing a good job. Yeah. Your thoughts, Dr. Because I know Prof. Ukuni home, but your thoughts, Dr. before we get his view.
You see, in politics, you are either in government or you are organizing to be in government. And where you organize to be in government is opposition. If you are in government, you manage government. So Munya has to be where the action is, because already the Meru constellation is already drawn with the Kindiki and others pulling. So he has to be where the alternative organization is. Because remember, Kiraitu has since said he has given up on politics, so Munya has to. But the most critical thing you should actually see behind Munya is the party leader of PNU. And PNU is looking likely to be the next idea around Central and the Mount Kenya region, especially Meru and so on. So that it's Munya and Kioni perhaps pulling together in the event that some fellows run away with Jubilee, the way the UDA coordinator here will tell us. In the event they run away with Jubilee, these guys need an alternative. And Munya is then the point person, as it were.
I was looking at it in a similar way. Prof, you have insider knowledge.
Now, what's happening to the mountain as a whole is that there is a shift. But the shift is lower in Mount Kenya East than in the Mount Kenya West, which describes the Gikuyu nation, the West. So the Gikuyus are moved considerably right now away from UDA. But Mount Kenya East is still very much in the UDA, even though the Mount Kenya East usually really doesn't have a mind of its own. We usually follow the West. So Munya is seeing a chance here. He's seeing an opportunity like the one those who are in UDA had during the election. Because if you ran on UDA in the Mount Kenya region, you just won. So he's seeing that if things continue the way they are, then he's likely going to be one of the beneficiaries of the shift. Because there wouldn't be a very big shift unless things change. If they continue the way they are. The shift in the Mount Kenya region, and I think also in Mbugusu land. You know, there are two Kenyans who vote together all the time since the multi-party came. There's the Mount Kenya region and the Mbugusu, Luya, part of the Mbugusu.
Really?
If you look at the history, since the multi-party came, they are either in the government together or in the opposition together. They vote the same direction because these people are driven by the economy. The two communities are driven by the economy. So they likely will be together in the next election. If the economy improves, they will still be together in the UDA. If the economy doesn't, they will be together on the other side in the next election.
Right.
So clever politicians, they look at the trend. The politicians are responding to the ground. And so I think Munya has seen that he's staying away. Is not helping him, so he needs now to come, so he's likely to harvest the dissatisfaction, which is growing.
Notice how he has pronounced it, Munya, not Munya.
Oh,
so he said Munya.
Munya.
Yeah, so
We take a break, but when we come back with the meat and potatoes. That is this subject matter, and that is the cost of living lie after the bloodshed. Talks in whose interest really. Tukutane huo upande mwingine.